Tonight we're going to be teaching on ministering to people who are aging and the losses they experience while they're aging. And it's going to be, I want to tell you, this is going to be a big, big subject, and already is in the next few years, because the baby boomer population is getting older. So, a lot of them retiring, and I forget how many a day are retiring, but it's in the thousands. And of course, the aging process doesn't stop. So anyways, let's have a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for loving us and for the opportunity to be here and to study this subject. We pray that we would learn from it and that we would be able to be better equipped to minister to people who are going through their later years of life and the losses that they are experiencing. Lord, I have a feeling that we all know somebody like that. So, Lord, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this tonight and to learn about it. In Christ's name, amen. Amen. All right. Well, we're going to read a passage from Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes is one of my favorite books of the Bible. And I happen to believe that some people are really down on Solomon, for the way he lived his life until the very end. But I think he was making a turn back to the Lord at the end, and he's lamenting what he missed out on in his walk with the Lord. So, but at the very end, he gives us a very famous verse in verse 1 of Ecclesiastes 12. Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come. Now we have to understand he's experiencing the difficult days of getting old. And the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. Now what's being talked about there, he has no pleasure in them because he's too old to have any ambition anymore. He's too old to dream dreams. His motivation, why start something? But if you can't end it, So I think he's toward the very end of his life. While the sun and the light, the moon and the stars are not darkened, and the clouds do not return after the rain. I think what he's saying there is that when you get old, your days start running together. You can't remember what day of the week it is sometimes, And in the day when the keepers of the house tremble, what are the keepers of the house, you think? It's the hands. The hands tremble. Okay, and the strong men bow down. What are the strong men? Their legs. Yeah, you got weak knees, and when the grinders cease because they are few. That was not hard to figure out, is it? Teeth. The lack of them. My Uncle Harold, he's 85 years old, and he had radiation treatment for cancer right behind his ear, and all his teeth fell out except for like one or two at the front. And he has to eat pretty soft food now, and they can't fix it because of the radiation, what it did to his gums. And so he can identify with this. Those that look through the windows grow dim. What looks through the windows? Our eyes. Our eyes are growing dim. When the doors are shut in the streets and the sound of grinding is low, normally it's very loud, so now it's low, meaning loss of hearing. When one rises up at the sound of a bird, not able to sleep a full night's rest, you wake up, you intend to sleep in until 7 o'clock in the morning, and you get up at 4 instead, with the birds. And all the daughters of music are brought low, and they're afraid of height, fear of accidents or falling is common to old age, and terrors in the way, anxiety about safety, about being able to defend oneself. And when the almond tree blossoms, what would that be? Right here, white hair. So, some of us are blossoming almond trees. So there you go. We're going to read a story that is in one of the Stephen Ministry manuals, but it's called I Must Be Getting Old. And it's a story of a guy named Don. One day, the day Don turned 65, they held a combination birthday and retirement party for him at work. Don felt a mixture of sadness and exhilaration. He felt sad as he packed up his personal items and from his desk and realized that he would soon be someone else's desk. On the other hand, Don had plans. He was looking forward to having enough time to pursue interests he had put off for years. Don had been planning his retirement garden for a couple of years as he looked forward to retirement. He had grown up on a farm and had long been making plans to grow again. He had even thought about keeping some chickens, but his wife Alice vetoed that idea. Don also planned to give a lot of time to the church. He had just been elected president of the congregation, and he had been talking to Pastor Jenkins about some changes that needed to be made. As Don and Alice stood off to the side and watched the party, Don said, "Well, I'm finally retired. I guess this means I must be getting old." They both laughed like it was a joke. Alice died when Don was 78. They had been married for 56 years. He felt terribly sad and listless for more than a year. Don learned to cook and clean for himself and still took care of the house. Having that work to do helped keep him going. Don's son Harold was quite worried about his father and spent a lot of time with him. "It isn't just Alice," Don said to Harold one day. "I miss her most of all, but she's just the most recent one to die. I went out with Walt and Francine just about every week for more than 20 years. Well, Walt died 2 years ago, and Francine followed him 6 months later. I've seen too many people die. I guess I must be getting old." Harold said, "You still have a lot of life in you." When Don was 84, he broke his leg getting out of the shower. He lay in pain for 3.5 hours and probably would have died there if Harold hadn't stopped by unexpectedly. Don spent 3 weeks in the hospital. When Harold suggested that his father move into a long-term care facility, Don agreed without much fight. Don felt as if the injury had taken the fight out of him. He didn't have the energy to live on his own anymore. One beautiful spring day, the attendant at the nursing home took Don to walk outside. The dogwood trees were blooming, white and pink, and Don was so happy to be outside on this lovely day that he tried to walk too far. Soon his legs lost strength, and he was lucky to make it to a bench before they gave out. The attendant had to find someone to go get Don's wheelchair. As the attendant returned, Don shook his head and said, "I guess I must be getting old." "It happens to the best of us," the attendant replied. Well, guess what? It's going to happen to all of us. That's what Solomon is saying here. Anyways, that's Don's story. It's a story of a lot of elderly people. A word of encouragement is in the scripture as well. In Isaiah chapter 46, verse 4. "Even to your old age," it's in your notes there, "I am he," this is the Lord, "even to gray hairs I will carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and will deliver you." So the Lord will carry us through old age. He will help us to deal with old age as it comes along. Have you ever wondered what you would look like at 85? My changing photos and church directories over the year are quite amazing to look at. From about age 38, I remember a church directory came out and my hair was dark brown. I had a brown beard and had great big glasses about like that, those days. And I had hair on top of my head. And look what all the years have done. And every time we do a directory, I can see the aging process at work. My daughter Holly has an app that shows what you will look like when you get old. And she showed her old version. My daughter is she's 32, I think. She showed her old version to Vicki one day. "This is what I'm going to look like when I get old." And Vicki said, she gasped, and she said, "You look exactly like your grandma McAnulty." And so there you go. And she does. She even as one of my pictures of my mother when she was young looked very much like my daughter. So she was young, so is young. So, what kinds of hopes and fears do people have when they are getting old, when they're aging? So we're going to take a look at that in just a minute. You're going to think about yourself in that regard for a little bit. We're going to do a couple of exercises, and so keep your study guide in front of you. But imagine yourself as an older person. I want you to write down in your imagining of yourself as an older person. By older, I mean probably older. Old.
Not next year.
What do you like most about yourself as an older person, as you imagine that? Kind of push yourself into that age bracket in your thinking. What are things that you would like about being old?
Hopefully you're wiser
Okay,
than
wisdom.
you were at
Okay,
one point.
all right, you're wiser. That's good.
I have more patience.
Gain patience. Okay.
More patience,
Yeah.
Able to get discounts.
it counts for something.
It does.
I love it when they still ask me if I qualify for one.
Oh,
It's like getting carded.
You can get discounts at 55
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, a lot of them up to 60 or
Yeah,
higher.
that is
But,
over for some of the people.
So those are things you like about yourself as an older person. There's a lot of things I like about some of you who are grown older. You know, there's a lot of beauty there, a lot of good things. Christ has done a really good job inside of a lot of you. So, you know, there is great knowledge a lot of times, accumulation of knowledge. What are the things that you like least about getting older?
Wrinkles.
Wrinkles, okay, appearance.
your whole body is falling apart.
Your body's falling apart, okay.
Pain.
They do have replacement parts.
Yes, not this big.
Yeah, pain, okay. Anything else?
Becoming invisible.
Oh, good answer,
What
right?
did you say?
What?
Becoming invisible. As you get
Oh,
older,
invisible.
sometimes people don't pay much attention to you
Yeah.
anymore.
Definitely don't.
Yeah,
Or some people try to take advantage of you.
yeah. The way I overcome that, Charlotte, is I carry one of my grandkids around, especially when they're babies. It makes me completely visible.
On the flip side of that is when you're older, you can say things and do things and people say, well, bless her heart.
Yeah, I get
Is that a good or bad?
Get away with more.
I get more smiles from people out in public than I do.
Yeah.
You know, just, especially when I wear my hat. You know,
You can do more things as an older person.
right.
You can love, you can touch people physically, and people don't get insulted and don't think you're trying to be
Okay.
That's
verbal
true.
or something.
That's true.
Well, let's look at some hopes and fears about growing older. Physically, what are some hopes that people might have physically as they're getting old?
Well, let me tell you my story. I just want to continue learning, and I'm just like that. I want to continue learning. And when I went back to school I just went to, when did I start school? May 27th, I think it was. And the class went fast. I was done. I graduated July 27th, right before that. But anyway, got my class, passed the class and passed my exam. Thank God for that. And then I said, well, Lord, I'm 60 years old. Am I gonna find a job now? You know, he said, you leave that to me. You know, trust the Lord.
That's right.
And so that's what I'm gonna do, continue to trust the Lord in every little thing. So I wanna keep encouraging myself to learn more and do more, and never stop learning.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, I mean, that would fit probably under the mental hopes, mental hopes. My mother finished her GED in her 50s, you know, there's all kinds of things like that people can choose to do. Physically, you would hope that you can stay active, right? And not lose your ability to stay active in life. But there's a corresponding fear, isn't there? That you'll have health that will keep you from being active, bad health that will keep you from being active. Emotionally, some hopes. You want to be happy, right? And you want to laugh. You want to have a good time, emotionally. But there's a fear that there will be losses that would take that away, or the loss of people in your life through death and that kind of thing.
Especially if you have a history of that in your family.
Right. Okay. Socially, when people get old, do they have social hopes about their social lives? Got more time to connect with other people, and do things with other people. But fears would be that you won't be able to keep up, or, again, probably connected to physical fears as well. Spiritually, what would be a hope there?
God will still use me.
That you can still serve the Lord. And a lot of people have the most effective service to the Lord as they get older, so it's good. I think I'm going to skip for now due to time reasons, exercise 3, but I'd like you to do that when you go home. It's a personal reflection time. As you imagine yourself as an older person, what are 5 aspects that you like about yourself as you're old, as you think about being old? And then what are 5 aspects you like least about yourself? All right, we're going to talk about 3 stages of aging. The first stage is called young old. That seems like a riddle, doesn't it? Young old. Who would be the young old, do you think?
They say 60 is the new 30.
Are you kidding?
Or 30, yeah.
The new 40, maybe?
The new 40, that's what it is.
Yeah, the young old would be people that are right at retirement age. That's people who are just beginning the adventure of retirement, and like Don did when he turned 65. But they're still basically somewhat in the prime of life. You're still active, physically active. Except for a couple of balky knees, I feel great. I'm not that far from 65. Mentally, I still feel like I'm like 25 years old. That's still that's the way I view myself sometimes. I look in the mirror and go, nah, can't believe I'm that old. So it's middle old is the second stage of getting old. This is a time when people are slowing down and having an increase of health problems, but they're still able to take care of themselves. And they're still independent, they can take care of themselves. Then you have the third stage, which is frail elderly. Frail, F-R-A-I-L, elderly. This stage, people suffer from a combination of physical, financial, and emotional losses that require the care of others. And that's the primary focus of our teaching tonight, our class tonight, is on ministering to that particular group. Because there's all kinds of things that start happening at that stage of life. Some people enter that earlier than others. You cannot determine, there are people not much older than me who are already there, that stage. Then there are people who are 80 and they're not there yet. So it just depends on the person. But there are losses that people experience in older years, and all of those losses, like any loss, have grief attached to them. Anytime we have a loss in life, we are going to go through a grief journey, and we're going to experience all the aspects of grief that we shared in our grief class not long ago. There's a loss, first of all, a loss of physical abilities that people grieve over, loss of strength, loss of even senses, such as hearing and seeing and taste sometimes even, and then the loss of appearance, physical appearance, such as those described by Solomon in those verses we read. So older people grieve over the loss of physical abilities. I have to tell you that I wish I could still run. I ran in a missions jogathon one time and ran 6 miles. But that was a long time ago. I could not do that now. I could do a walk-around, not a jogathon. So you kind of grieve over that. Hard for me to play full court basketball. I can't do that anymore. I'd stay at one end and say, throw me the ball, So it's Then there's the loss of loved ones. As people age, they more frequently experience the loss of spouses, siblings, friends, and even their own children to death. Sometimes children die before their parents. I remember Dot Hathcock, you remember Dot? Dot lived to be about 94. She was a precious member of our church for many years. And I visited her every week for years. And Dot, she just didn't realize she was old. And she was in her mid-80s. I went to see her at the place that she's living, and it was one of those kind of, it wasn't assisted living, but it was a retirement, kind of partially assisted living. But they had music going on down at the lobby, and she said, "That's just a bunch of old people down there." She's like 85, you know. And but you know what really hit Dot was that all of her friends had died. That's when she really, and she got really discouraged. She was grieving the loss of her friends and her husband and others. And there's a loss of the ability to do work. Forced retirement is common. As people get older, they get replaced in the workplace. They usually are some of the higher paid people in the workplace because they've been on the job so long. And so the company wants to replace them with less expensive employees. And so they get replaced. And they are grieving over the loss of their career, maybe at an earlier time than they expected. Most people are trying to think about, they're going to wait till they're 70 to retire. Then I had a financial planner tell me the other day that only 1% of the population makes it to 70 before they draw Social Security.
My mom did.
Yeah, 1%.
She did, yeah.
That's not many. And about half of the people actually start drawing Social Security around 62 or 63. And a lot of that's because of health, obviously. But when you lose your job, your ability to work, the feeling of rejection may emerge, along with the loss of self-esteem. There's a loss of satisfaction of being productive as well. Self-sufficiency can be lost because you're used to paying your own way, and sometimes that's not altogether possible. Or the feeling of being useless can set in because you're used to working hard and a lot of hours. And all of a sudden, what are you going to do with all that time on your hands? And then the fourth thing is the loss of power and respect. A person may have ascended to a position of expertise or supervision or even executive management in the workplace. But now there's no one to supervise or manage except your wife, and she's not going to put up with that. And, you know, I'm sure there's some comical stories to be told about that. But too often there is a sense that one is too old to serve in church life as well. And so just sit back and let the young folk do everything, you know. But you know, older people have a lot to offer to the body of Christ in serving as well. There's the loss of one's home that can happen when because of health reasons and that kind of thing, you may have to move out of your home you perhaps have lived in for many years. And all your possessions are there, things that you have collected over the years. And you know, antique furniture, artwork, all kinds of things that you've cherished. And now we're saying you've got to move into this little tiny apartment somewhere, you know, and you have to get rid of most of that stuff when you do that. Sometimes you're told you can no longer drive your car. So the loss of mobility is a tremendous loss as well. And a person's identity oftentimes is wrapped up in their home. You know, that special place they go home to every night. So then if they have to move to a long-term care facility, that especially can be very, very traumatic to people as they're in the later years of aging. Loss of autonomy over mobility, decision-making, and finances. Sometimes one of the children will come along and say, "Dad or Mom, you know, you forgot to pay a lot of these bills, you know. I think you need to let me start paying your bills for you. Or, you know, and then you go get a power of attorney, is transferred. And so there's, a lot of the older people don't say much about that, but on the inside you're going, you know, I can't even pay my own bills anymore, you know. Somebody else is having to do that for me. And so that's a loss. Separation from spouse. If one spouse needs long-term care and the other one doesn't, a separation's going to occur. You know, my dad lived in a nursing home the last few years of his life, while my mom lived at home. And she had to go see him every day or so. There's a loss of being known and appreciated and respected. And Charlotte mentioned being invisible, out of sight, out of mind. There are other losses too, we won't go into, but many losses. But there are gains experienced by people in their later years too. The list is not as long. There are gains. One of the gains is that the freedom to be known for who you are rather than what you do. People get to know you as a person rather than by what you do. Have you ever seen men get together? What's one of the first things that they ask each other?
What do you do?
What do you do? You know, men are like that. You know, if some guy asks another man that, and they say, why don't we have lunch together? Well, what do you want? No, they want something from him. You know, not just fellowship. But when you get older, you know, there's no agenda other than fellowship and being known for who you are. So that's a gain. Another one is freedom and time to carry out new interests and new ways to use talents and gifts. So you can transfer, instead of working in the workplace, for instance, you're using your gifts in other ways.
Let me tell you right now, retirement is more wonderful than you will ever know.
How long were you a librarian in the school system?
30 years.
30 years. Charlotte, how long did you teach in the school system?
37.
37 years, okay. And now I'll tell you this though about Charlotte. I think she's busier now than she was when she was teaching school.
I wonder when you had time to go to work, right, Charlotte?
But she stays busy. I mean, a lot of people find the freedom to kind of form their own job description, you know, in life. And they don't have to have somebody tell them what to do, you know.
You know, Jerry,
Yeah.
I've discovered the world is sitting out there waiting for somebody to come to them. They don't come to you. And you can spend all of your time, if you want to, visiting and helping other people. You can do that without any difficulty.
And they say that somebody who stays active like that, especially in social connections, lives longer typically and is healthier as well. There's more time for relationships. And time for grandchildren. Yay! You know, and great-grandchildren. More time for friends. Time for volunteering at church and hospitals and nonprofits. Time for enjoyment of special interests. So that's a gain. All those things are gains upon getting older. Spiritual maturity is another gain. The relationship with God often deepens considerably during a person's older years. They really stop and kind of take another look, and they grow rapidly in their walk with the Lord during the older years.
Because you realize that you're getting closer to actually needing Him.
Exactly right. You know what things are most important in life as you get older. Freedom from the
Priorities are different.
priorities. They're just,
You know, things that used to be important aren't important
that's
anymore.
right. There's the freedom of the fear of death, from the fear of death. Older people are more in touch with immortality, and they often make peace with themselves about their own death and embrace life all the more, knowing that their life is not that much longer. So they want to live as much as they can during that time. Then there's a deepening companionship with one's spouse or contemporaries. It's beautiful when you see a husband and wife at the end of their days. My wife, she tells me pretty often, I am looking forward to growing old with you. You know, I hope that it's as nice as she thinks it's going to be.
I hope you have the opportunity.
Yeah.
That's right.
There, I know. Charlotte lost her first husband. He's what, 59 years old, or yeah. And so I didn't get a chance to do that. I'm going to share 4 myths with you about aging. These myths are about stereotyping and prejudice that people have toward those who are older, okay? Myth number one, that most people will become senile, meaning confused and have major lapse of memory when they are older. There are people who assume that that's going to happen to anybody who's gotten older. The truth is, only a very small percentage suffer from the disease called senile dementia. Only a small percentage. Other issues can cause confusion and memory loss, though. One is Alzheimer's. Another is depression, which is common in certain phases of getting older. Grief can cause that, so grief is a part of getting older a lot of times. Anxiety can cause memory loss. A lack of social stimulation, and being with other people, and being stimulated by conversations, and that kind of thing. Over-medication can cause it. Lack of proper diet, cardiovascular problems, and advanced alcoholisms. Now, all of these issues can be corrected and reversed if they're happening. Somebody who's precious to me was having trouble with his memory, and he was confused and not thinking straight. Went to the doctor and he had really extremely low magnesium or something, and once he got that taken care of, he was fine, There are people who, when they're dehydrated, and older people are commonly known not to drink enough water, not to hydrate enough.
Right.
Dehydration will cause confusion.
Kidney
and
infection.
memory loss. Kidney infections can do the same thing. So don't think that everybody's going to be senile when they get older, especially me. All right. Myth number 2, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You've heard people say, oh, he's just set in his ways. He's an old dog, you can't teach him new tricks to. Now, this is a belief that when people are older, they cannot learn, they cannot change, they cannot grow as a person. The truth of the matter is, educational classes for the elderly fill up faster than just about any kind of classes around. And it's also true that older persons frequently outperform younger students in achieving academic excellence. So, how about that? And resistance to change has more to do with personality than it does with age. There are plenty of people who are 35 years old who are resistant to change, and aren't willing to grow. So, the third myth is chronological age. This is the sense that because people are of an older age, that they are over the hill. Okay? Physical health and personal attitude and outlook and social interaction, as well as support from friends and family and other caring people, the truth is that helps determine a person's real age. Those things determine how old the person really is. Somebody said, you're as old as you think you are. There's some value in that statement. Somebody else said, it's not how old you are, it's how you are old. It's how you are old that counts. And then a guy named Malcolm Cowley said, we start by growing old in other people's eyes, then slowly we come to share their judgment. And I've gone through just a little tinge of that, and people start saying, well, you got to raise up your replacement pretty soon, and things like that. And I'm going, am I going to be replaced? And in due time, whenever that needs to happen, but I don't want to start falling into that rut of thinking that way. Nobody can be replaced, by the way. That's kind of a foolish way to look at it.
That thought pattern could actually even just be a crutch of just kind of giving up.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everybody will get older, but you could also kind of think, I'm getting older and I'm going to be replaced, and it just I think it could just lead to people just, why work on anything? Why grow? Why bother?
Right. Yeah. But every time I prayed about it, the Lord just comes back with this: stay the course, complete the race. So there you go. The fourth myth is older people Oh, by the way, the truth of that is age is not the factor that says a person is over the hill, but these other issues, attitude and all that. Myth number 4, older persons choose to isolate themselves. You know, they just hide away. And that it's because older people do not want to welcome the involvement of others in their lives. Well, you might be surprised sometimes at how many people are involved in an older person's life. Maybe even outside the sphere that you're looking at, you know. There was a lady in our church for many years. She was a character. I like characters, you know, and she was one of those characters, and she was a baseball fan too. But anyway, she got involved in a senior citizen center. Practically ran the place for a while. It was a fundraiser for it and all kinds of things. She stayed busy doing those things. She did not realize she was old, you know, because of that. The truth is, the majority of older people are not socially isolated and lonely. Most are healthy enough to develop mutually satisfying relationships. So that's a stereotype that is not true. Okay, we're going to finish up here in the last few minutes here, talking about ministry to people who have experienced losses due to aging. Number 1, they need to talk about their feelings. You need to talk to somebody about how they feel. Somebody that's available to listen and pray with them about their difficult feelings due to losses that they've experienced. But older people are often reluctant to talk about their feelings. Why would you think that would be true? Why are older people often reluctant to talk about their feelings, about getting old?
They'd be embarrassed.
Okay, they don't want to appear helpless or something, you know.
If they talk about it, then it is so. Then if they talk about it, then it actually is. If
Okay.
they don't talk about
So
it,
it
it's
kind of
not really happening.
makes it concrete or something.
Denial about the whole thing.
Well, it's also true, it may change with the next generation that gets old, but this current generation that has gotten old and previous generations before them, oftentimes we're taught not to talk about their feelings, that that's private stuff, you know. You don't talk about your feelings to other people, you know. And so they kind of have bought into that rule. It's probably a really bad rule, you know. So they may believe their feelings are too private to share. They may have a fear of rejection if they talk about their feelings. I know that men especially are prone to think that if they admit they feel, say, depressed, that's a sign of weakness. And men are not to show their weakness, you know, and that kind of thing. So feelings may be new and uncomfortable. And then somebody suggested this, they may have resigned themselves to those feelings and say, well, this is just what it's like. I'm just going to give in to it, you know. And what's the use? The ministry here is to not push them to talk about their feelings. If you do, you will build a wall that will be hard to penetrate. Okay? You don't push somebody to talk about something they're not ready to talk about. Okay? You create a comfortable atmosphere for them. And then you develop trust. People will talk about feelings, internal feelings, when there's trust that is developed. Intimacy is important to talking about feelings, and that's about trust. Trust grows and the barriers will start coming down. So you say something like this, well, it sounds like you feel that your feelings are private right now, and I respect that. Would you like to talk about something else? And eventually, as the relationship builds with that person, they trust you enough to start talking about those difficult feelings at some point along the way. Sometimes older people discount their feelings as like I said, a weakness, or somebody said it's embarrassing, you know, or they're imposing on others by talking about their feelings, you know. I've had people tell me, they start to talk about their feelings and they say, well, you don't want to hear all this stuff, you know, this is just, you don't want to hear this. And I'll have to say, it's okay. I'll be happy to hear it from you, you know, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to talk about. And so they have to get over that. So you say to them, actually, I do want to listen, and your feelings are important to me. So you emphasize, again, confidentiality, that you're not gonna go around talking to anybody else about what they share with you.